Hey everyone, and welcome back. My name is Mackenzie, aka Astromac. I'm a professional astrologer and I'm here to talk all things astrology with you. Today we're diving deep into the depths of the sign of Cancer. Cancer as a sign and as an archetype and as a season, and how to best work with the energy and how it shows up in our lives and what it means for you. There's a lot to this watery emotional sign, so let's dive right in. Cancer is the fourth sign of the zodiac. So it goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and now Cancer. And Cancer is that sign that is ruled by the moon. And the moon rules over our inner world. So that's like our feelings and our emotions and our instincts and our like instinctual reaction to things. But it's also like our memories, and it's those things that we need to feel safe and secure emotionally. And so it's kind of like how we seek out that safety and security and what we need to nurture ourselves on a deep emotional level. And Cancer is very different than the sign that comes before it, being Gemini. If you haven't watched my Gemini 101 video yet, this would be a good time to go back and watch that, because I go into much greater detail about Gemini as a sign and an archetype and as a season. But basically, Gemini is this sign that's like quick and curious, and it's all about like movement and communication. And it's an air sign that is ruled by Mercury, so it's like this, sign that lives very much in like this mental sphere. And then as we move into Cancer, this is kind of where we're deepening our understanding of those things that we learned through Gemini and kind of integrating it and trying to understand it on an emotional level. Cancer really looks to evoke like feeling and evoke a deeper understanding and evoke like a deeper connection of things. If you've been with me since the beginning of my Zodiac series, then you know that Aries is like that spark of life, and it's that seedling sprouting out of the ground and initiating life. And Taurus is that same seedling, like deepening its roots and really anchoring itself down into the ground and taking in those nutrients. And then Gemini is that same seedling, like leafing out and branching out and kind of growing into the surroundings. Now, as we move into Cancer season, if we're kind of keeping the same seedling in mind, this is about nurturing our internal growth. And it's when that plant is strengthening its inner systems and taking in the necessary nutrients and water that it needs to grow stronger. And in this state, this is kind of like when the fruits are starting to come out as well. And in that state, that plant is vulnerable, and so it needs care and protection. And Cancer season signals the summer solstice where I live. And so during summer, and especially where I live, it gets very, very hot. And so I'm having to water my plants outside even more because it is so hot, and watering them more as the plants grow taller and bigger and they grow their fruits or their vegetables, whatever you want to think of it as. And so my plants in my garden, they're just needing more water and nutrients to continue growing, but they also need barriers and protection to protect from the wildlife from eating those. And you might be wondering, like, I didn't come here for a gardening lesson, but this is just like Cancer energy and how it applies in the real world. So if we're thinking about all of the signs so far, Aries is that lighting of a match, and it's that spark of life, and Taurus is what sustains that momentum or sustains that fire. And during Gemini season, it introduces this like adaptability and this movement and this communication element. Then in Cancer, we're kind of nurturing and cultivating those things that we learned through Gemini, and really feeling into them and, trying to recognize what it is that we truly care about. And so after like the mental buzz and the busyness of Gemini season, Cancer season invites us to move inward and kind of become more reflective. It's not so much about, collecting new information and learning new things and meeting new people and making connections like we do in Gemini. It's more about feeling through things and really kind of absorbing some of those things that we learned. And so Cancer is a cardinal water sign, meaning that it kicks off the start of a new season, and it's ruled by emotion and feeling and intuition. The season that it kicks off is summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere. So happy solstice to everyone. But being a cardinal water sign, that just means that it leads through the emotions, and it leads through feeling and evoking emotion. And when you're leading through your emotions, you're probably going to be pretty sensitive. And so when I think about Cancer being like this cardinal water sign, I tend to think about how we as humans evolved from fish basically. And so we started in the water and just slowly over time we evolved and became mammals in the process. And so, like, we all started in water a long, 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 long time ago. And so, if it weren't for water, none of us would be here. Like, our bodies are like 75% water or something like that. And so, water is like a very necessary part of being a human and being alive on this planet. And that's kind of the waters I associate with Cancer, along with the tides, the ocean tides that in and out. The tides are ruled by the moon. And so it's just very like cyclical and there's a rhythm to it. And there's a rhythm to Cancer energy as well, where like, the mood is always shifting and adjusting. And it's also like the womb space, where it goes through this process of building and then shedding. I think that's why Cancer is so associated with the mother for, a number of different reasons, but also just because Cancer symbolizes the womb space and its growth. And, think about when we're in the womb, we're surrounded by water, fluid, and so we come from this water, and that is that cardinal water of Cancer. And so that's why Cancer is so strongly associated with like motherhood and also where we come from, like our family and our roots and our ancestors and our lineage and just the past in general. So Cancer is also tied to our memories and our lineage and those emotional patterns that we've inherited. And it really reminds us that like the past is not just something that we can conjure up and think about, but it's something that is like within us and it's something that we carry within us deeply. And when you think about it, like our first home really was our mother's womb. And then after we were born, these physical bodies became our new home for our soul and our spirit. So these homes that we're given for this lifetime, we really have to take care of them and nurture them and treat them with love and care. And something else that I think about when I think about like this association with the past is how, water itself is able to carry memories. And just how Cancer itself is strongly associated with the past and our memories. And actually, if you have strong Cancer placements, you probably have a really good memory. But I think it's because like memories are so strongly linked to emotions and like the emotions that we were feeling in the moment. And so like, wherever we have Cancer in our chart is an area of life that we experience with a lot of emotions and a desire to preserve the past and preserve those memories. And with our memories, it's kind of like they're cemented through our emotions. I really feel like above all else though, like when you boil things down, Cancer energy is just like this very caring energy. And when you care about something, it's like you want to protect it and nurture it and take good care of it and really help it grow. So like, that doesn't always mean that everybody with Cancer placements are going to become a parent, because I think a lot of times people associate it with like, nurturing and taking care of a child, but it could also be nurturing and taking care of plants or nurturing and taking care of your pet, or it could be, nurturing a creative project, or maybe you're just like nurturing in your style of communication and like you're just able to help make people feel at home that way. And that's how that nurturing plays out. I tend to always think of like a garden with Cancer energy though. Really, I can associate all the signs with a garden, but especially Cancer, because you have to water your garden and you have to make sure your garden is getting the necessary nutrients it needs and the sunlight. And putting plants that work well together next to each other, and then also making sure that you're protecting your garden from any like predators or like birds or other animals and critters. And like if you have a lot of wind and you have a plant that's maybe like small and weak at first, making sure that you're putting a stake next to it in order to help it grow stronger and taller and bigger. The whole like tending process is very Cancerian, and it's very like, Cancers, they're the nurturers. And again, they're very caring and they like to see something like start to finish, that whole process. They like to nurture something from like when it's still a seed and planting it, and then it becomes a seedling, and then transplanting that into the garden, and then continuing to nurture and grow that same seedling, and then it produces fruit, and then that fruit can become like juice or wine or whatever. It's that whole process from like start to finish, and that whole nurturing process. And when you're nurturing, it takes a certain level of trust and just like a willingness to not like have to like surveillance it 24/7, but just knowing that the growth is happening whether you see it or not. And I know I'm using like a lot of plant analogies in this one, but I'm just surrounded by wildlife, and so I observe the signs in nature a lot. But it could also be just like, nurturing an idea from start to finish, where it becomes like this whole big project or like an event or, whatever it might be. The thing about Cancer energy, though, is they're going to be nurturing those things that they deeply care about. And so it's not like they're going to be nurturing something that they don't care about. Take it from a Cancer Mars. If I don't want to do something, or if I don't care about it, it's not getting done. But when we do care about something, we care about it very deeply, and we care about it on a deeply emotional level. And Cancer is that sign that, like feels things very deeply and very readily. Like they are just ready to feel the feel. There's no hiding a Cancerian's emotions. And, they need to let out those emotions, whether it's like, laughing or crying or whatever. Part of their lesson is actually, learning how to honor those emotions and those feelings, and really leaning into that sensitive nature that they have. Like, sensitivity is truly such a gift, and the way that they're able to feel things so deeply is also such a gift. And that doesn't mean like expressing your emotions to people that you like don't really know, or people that you don't really trust, but it's learning to honor those feelings and express those feelings in a safe space and a safe container with safe people that you feel comfortable with. Sometimes that might mean like retreating and going to your home or wherever your safe space might be. Like, think about how Cancer is the crab. They need that shell on the outside, and in order to kind of like retreat and go within and feel what they need to feel and express those feelings however they need to express it. The key is just like not stuffing those emotions down, and don't hold on to the emotions, but just treat them as visitors passing through, and feel the emotion and don't try to attach any kind of meaning to it. So if you meet a Cancerian, you might kind of notice like they have this hard external shell, but they need that exterior in order to protect the fleshy, sensitive, vulnerable part of themselves. Like, Cancer energy is just so sensitive. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful gift to have. But if you've ever like wronged a Cancer, or done something that hurts a Cancerian's feelings, that's when you might notice like that hard exterior, like the walls go up and they become very cold and harsh, and they'll ice you out and use those claws, those pinchers, and they'll hit you where it hurts. But it's just because they are trying to protect themselves, or maybe it's like they're protecting a loved one, whatever it might be. Also, that crab shell is literally the crab's home, and it carries its home on its back. And I very much associate that with Cancer energy as well. It's kind of like they just have this, this energy that feels like home to a lot of people. And like this energy that, puts people at ease and makes them feel safe and comfortable. Another thing about, the crab is they don't move forward in a straight line. They tend to like, shuffle sideways here and there, and they move in like a zigzag pattern. So they're not as like direct as like an Aries would be, and they kind of approach things more cautiously, and it's kind of like they're sensing out the vibe here and there and picking up on the emotions and the energy of the room or wherever it might be. They just like to kind of like feel things out and approach things a little more slowly and get a feel for the vibe, really. So actually going back to Cancer being, that cardinal water sign and leading through the emotions, Cancer is also ruled by the moon, and so there's a certain like emotional reactivity that comes with Cancer energy, and it can sometimes come across as being like moody or overly sensitive. But when it comes down to it, it really comes from this space of like being vulnerable and wanting to protect that vulnerability, whether it's like of yourself or a loved one, or just someone or something that you care deeply about. And I think another way that it can kind of come across that way is they're kind of like Taurus, where they really like to be comfortable and they like to feel safe and secure and familiar with their environment. So when they get into an environment where like they don't feel comfortable because like, maybe the vibes are off or they're picking up on the emotions of other people around them, or there's not food or something, like that's another thing. Cancer is very strongly associated with like the comfort foods. But, when they're in that environment where it's like, even just like the vibe of the room feels off, that's when they're going to be like putting those walls up real quick and they're going to be like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't feel safe or secure here, so I'm gonna go back inside my crab shell and leave at the earliest convenience. And so these people, these Cancerians, sometimes they can be real like homebodies and creatures of comfort because they like being in their like safe and secure and comfortable zone where they're familiar with their surroundings. And like, that's all fine and dandy, and I myself am quite a homebody sometimes, but make sure that you're not like building up those walls so tall and so thick that nobody can get in. And try not to stay like in your comfort zone for so long that you don't even go out and get to experience and live your life. Part of living life means that you have to get uncomfortable sometimes, and I know that's probably not your favorite thing to hear if you've got like Taurus or Cancer placements. With this desire for comfort though, these are the people that it's like in everything that they do and even in just like the energy that they bring, it's just like they feel like home to a lot of people. And that can be very comforting to a lot of people. And, again, just like put people at ease and make their guards come down. And so these are the people that like when they do welcome you into their home, it's like they'll want to like feed you and take good care of you and make you feel like you're at home. And they like to like meet you on this like emotional level and connect on a deeply emotional level actually. And in that process, they like to help make you feel safe and comfortable in their presence. And so that'll help kind of like let your walls drop a little bit. Like it makes them feel good to know that you feel like safe and secure and comfortable in their presence. And again, they love to nurture and take care of people, and it's just this very nurturing energy, but it's also this desire to be nurtured in return. Like how they nurture people and how they make other people feel welcome and like they belong. It's kind of like they do that because they really desire for other people to bring that feeling to them as well. Something that I think about this a lot is just like the moon's rulership, and I think also that's kind of where some of that moodiness can come from. Like think about how quickly the moon moves through all the signs. I think it spends like 2.5 days in each sign, and it's moved through all 12 in a month. And throughout that month, it's changing what it appears like, what phase the moon's in. It changes day to day. So how a Cancer feels one day is going to be very different to how they feel the next day and the next day after that. And it's just like this rhythm and this cycle, it's a very cyclical sign. It's those tides, one day it's going to be like just brushing your feet, and then the next day it might like knock you over, it just depends. And so a Cancerian might be like super warm and welcoming and, nurturing one minute, and then if they get triggered or something happens, then they're gonna like shut down and close off and be cold the next minute. Like the moon is not quite as like unpredictable as like, Mercury, with its retrograde cycles, but the moon's transit, it is one of the more predictable ones that we are able to track. Like we are able to predict those cycles and patterns and rhythms of the moon, but it's constantly moving and changing and waxing and waning. And so it goes from being like fully illuminated and fully seen to, totally dark with the new moon and not wanting to be seen. And so if you have strong Cancer energy in your chart, it's kind of like you just have to learn your own rhythms and learn to work with those rhythms. Like, take it from a Cancer Mars. If I'm not in the mood to do something, I'm not going to do it. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be something that I really care about, and I have to be in the mood to do it as well. And so for me, I've just had to like come to terms with, some weeks I'm going to feel more motivated and feel more creative and feel more like ready to take on the world and just feeling more social and outgoing. And then the next week I might feel like really tired and unmotivated and like I'm just not wanting to do shit, and all I want to do is like sit and eat and watch my favorite comfort shows and cry my eyes out 10 times a day. Like, I can be, for real, super moody sometimes, but I've just learned to, accept that about myself and work with those natural rhythms. And a huge thing with Cancer energy is finding a healthy way to get out your emotions and express your emotions, whether it's laughing or crying or yelling, screaming, whatever it might be. Like for me, before I am able to like do anything, I usually need to have a big deep cry before I'm able to like, take any kind of action. But it's really just like, it's like that crying is what initiates that action and initiates that movement. And that just act of crying really helps get that energy moving. And for Cancer placements, like crying is for real a release valve. And so, you might cry when you're happy or when you're sad or when you're mad. Like, crying is just a way to get out that energy and get out some of those pent up emotions. So, like, once you've gotten those emotions out and you've decided that you care about something enough to want to nurture it and see it grow, Cancer can be incredibly tenacious. Like when they really care about something, they can really like have a firm grasp and keep a strong hold on it and really cling to it very closely. Like, think about those crabs pinchers, once they latch on to something, they're not letting go. And when I think about them being tenacious, I think of like this determined and persistent energy where they really don't give up easily on those things that they care about. And sometimes this can even be to a fault because, like, for example, if this Cancerian person, if they deeply care about another person and that person, it's not like reciprocated, a Cancer is going to be pouring all their time and energy and effort into this person that is just taking. And so that can be when like a Cancer is trying to pour from an empty cup. And that can be really draining to them, especially when they're not getting that nurturing that they crave in return. So it might take them a little bit to kind of like loosen their grip on that person because, they've put so much time and energy and effort and nurturing into this person or this relationship. It's like they want to stick around and see how this person grows and flourishes or how the relationship could potentially grow or flourish. But the fact of the matter is, some people are just users or takers or whatever, and they don't necessarily need that nurturing that a Cancer wants to give. And sorry to say it, Cancer, but sometimes you just gotta let go and you gotta learn to fill up your own cup. And that nurturing that you were trying to pour into someone else, maybe use that to pour into yourself and nurture yourself and take good care of yourself. And I know another thing I keep saying is that Cancers are super protective, and they are like the fierce mama bears of the zodiac. They will fight and commit crimes for the people that they love and care about. Like if you hurt somebody who is close to a Cancer placement, expect to hear from the Cancer. Like you're gonna have to deal with them in one way or another. Like for me, I have a Cancer Mars in the third house of, siblings, and I am fiercely protective of my sister and, my friends that feel like family. And in this way, like Cancer can be like, they have their tribe. They have their tribe of their people, whether it's, their family or their chosen family. And in fact, like their friends usually do become like their family. And so in this like, family, like our tribe, whatever you want to call it, they just are fiercely, fiercely protective and loyal to these people. Like whenever you're in a group with somebody who has strong Cancer placements, it's kind of like that group, it really does start to evolve and form into a family. And so again, if you hurt someone who has Cancer placements, like if you hurt their family or their friends, it's going to be like you're almost harming them personally, and they will take it personally, and then they will react accordingly. And because Cancer is that water sign and it is so intuitive and sensitive, it's kind of like they know your most sensitive spot and they will hit you where it hurts. And it's like they won't even feel bad about it because, you hurt someone that they love and they want to hurt you back. And they want to hurt you where it hurts the most. With that intuition, though, they're also incredibly sensitive to the energies of other people and specifically the emotions of other people. So part of their lesson in this life, as they grow and mature with the energy, is learning to discern between like, what's my emotions and what's the emotions of other people that I'm just picking up on. And then they have to learn how to, not feel the emotions of other people for them and let other people feel their own emotions. And so, just because you do pick up on those feelings of the people around you, it's not your responsibility to feel those emotions. Even if it is somebody that you love and care about, it's not your job to fix their life. Don't sacrifice your own well-being for the sake of another person's. You have to learn to fill up your own cup first. So learn to nurture yourself and take good care of yourself and pour that energy into your own cup so you're able to, pour into the cups of those people that you do love and care about. Another thing, with that intuition and that empathy and that sensitivity, Cancers are some of those people that will give you some of the best advice because they're able to really put themselves in your shoes, and when they care, they deeply care, and it's not like they're going to give shitty advice. So when they are able to see things from your perspective, it's like that empathy runs really deep and it can be really strong. But it's kind of like they have to be able to identify with you in some way. They don't identify with everyone, and they know that. It's they are sensitive, and so if they're going to be feeling things super deeply, and if they're going to be moved that often by everyone, that would drive them crazy. And so they really kind of restrict that empathy and protect that empathy and kind of save that for things that are sacred to them. And so again, when you're in a Cancerian circle, they will care for you and they will protect you, and that is not something to take lightly. It's literally like that emotion that drives a parent to protect their children, that love of loving something so much that you will do anything to protect it. That emotion there and that protective instinct that's unrestrained almost, that energy of there's nothing you wouldn't do for your child. That energy is Cancer energy. That bond and that connection, that is Cancer energy. So really at its core, Cancer energy is all about emotional safety. It's the mother and the caretaker, and it's that person who always remembers your birthday and remembers your favorite food, or sends you soup when you're sick. It's not just about nurturing others, but it's also about nurturing yourself. And Cancer energy really teaches us to listen to our needs, and especially the needs that don't speak very loudly, that need to rest and that need to nurture ourselves and that need to cry and that need to feel things all the way through. So during Cancer season, we're all just feeling a little more sensitive, and it's things just come up to the surface more easily, and so we might be crying more or grieving or longing for the past. There might be this nostalgia. But with the emotions that come up to the surface more easily, that also means this tenderness comes up more easily, and love and emotions and this deep desire to protect what we care about most. Now, I know this has been a lot to take in, so let's just briefly bring it back to basics. Cancer is a cardinal water sign, meaning they lead through their emotions. And so with that, again, it might come across as being emotionally reactive, but they just jump into action when their emotions tell them to. Or again, think about those waters that we come from, whether it's from the womb or how we have evolved from fish and we started off in the water, or think about when you're crying, that first tear, it just it paves the way for more tears to come. And Cancer is ruled by the moon, and I talked about this earlier, but the moon changes signs every 2.5 days, and it's constantly changing phases as well. And that's something that we're able to observe with our eyes, our own 2 eyes. And the moon rules the tides, and it's very cyclical in nature and very predictable in that way. And so a Cancer changes day to day based on how they're feeling. And the moon is associated with our emotions and intuition and our inner world. And that really aligns with that emotional and nurturing nature of Cancer as a sign. And then in the Zodiac, Cancer is the crab, and I talked about this a lot already, so I probably won't spend very much time. But like, think about the crab underneath the shell, how it's vulnerable and sensitive, and how it needs that shell to protect itself sometimes, and how it carries its home on its back, and how it's literally at home in its body. And that's very much how we are as humans. Like, our bodies are our home for our soul and our spirit. And then like looking at the glyph itself, supposedly it's supposed to represent the crab, but I think we all know what it looks like. Gotta throw in a little humor when we can. But it's supposed to represent like the crab shell and its claws, and when you look at it, it's like those two circles are on the inside, and that is what that outer shell is protecting. And so like that going inside that shell, that is that safe space. So now let's look at some of the Cancerian strengths, and I don't like to say weaknesses, but things that come up when they're under-resourced. Cancer energy is compassionate and nurturing and intuitive, and it knows how to hold space for others and really honor their emotional truth. They're also like fiercely protective, and again, it's like that mama bear energy. I've noticed that they also have this tendency to want to like fight for the underdog, or people that they just view as being more vulnerable. And they're also really good at cultivating, and that's part of like that nurturing and caring energy as well, where they're just like putting their energy into something to help it grow and become something of its own. I think most importantly, like, none of us would be here without Cancer energy. Another thing that they're really good at is, Cancer energy is strongly connected to like this bonding energy and meeting people on an emotional level and creating those deep emotional bonds, and like creating those bonds that really have that potential to last like a whole lifetime. Like, think about your family. And Cancer is a very evocative sign where they're able to evoke emotion. But then on like the more under-resourced side of Cancer, sometimes that's when like that moodiness can come out, or they can be like overly like surveillance and come across as being like needy, or sometimes they can even be like too attached to the past. And then they can sometimes like shut down and retreat and even like emotionally manipulate when they're feeling unsafe. So part of Cancer's lesson in this lifetime is learning how to feel their emotions without letting it like totally consume them, and they like drown in those feelings almost. And to offer like care and nurturing to others without it kind of like consuming them or like losing yourself in others, aka becoming codependent. Another thing that I tend to need to look out for is almost like this self-protection to the point of isolation, like building up your walls so high or making that outer shell so thick that nobody can get in. And so another kind of like growing or learning lesson that Cancer has to learn is learning that vulnerability does not mean danger. That your softness and your sensitivity is not a weakness, but it's truly a superpower. And you don't have to carry everybody else's emotions and feel everyone else's emotions to be worthy of love, really. You are worthy just as you are. And so, like I say, with every sign, no sign is perfect, and that includes Cancer, although I do have a big soft spot for Cancer energy. And so my biggest tip for whether you have Cancer placements or you're just going through Cancer season is to treat yourself like someone that you love and tend to your inner world like it's this beautiful, like sacred temple and sacred space, because it is. So let me know down in the comments if you have any Cancer placements, or somebody who has Cancer placements, and if you resonated with anything that I talked about today. And if you liked this video or if it helped you at all, be sure to give it a like and hit subscribe and share it with your friends, because that would really help me out. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for now. So until next time, love you, bye!